I was 300 pounds 15 years ago, and all of the money that I worked for, I would go buy beer and cocaine and like hang out with my friends and smoke cigarettes in parking lot. But then I went home and I was alone.
Yep.
And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? But then I would just do it again and again. So the moment where it shifted for me to go back, it was years later. It was Thanksgiving, and I was with my parents and family. So we're hanging out, and I'm drinking too much. My dad told me to stop drinking, so we got into an argument. The argument got heated, and I ran outside, and I punched a hole in my own car window in front of my entire family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmother was there. I was like, what the fuck? I just started crying. My aunt comes up to me, and she goes, we've all fucked up before too. Now you have. If you want to change, you need to decide to change. We're all okay now because we chose to get better. This is your moment to choose to get better or not. And that was it. I was like, this is my fault.
You took responsibility.
Yeah, for the first time.
Welcome back to the podcast. Obviously, we've already been chatting, so I just am going to have us dive right into it. Cavan, thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cavan.
Yeah, good to be here.
So yeah, I just really want to plug right back into the conversations that you guys were having about just the interesting part of having, you know, the next chapter. And I think that's a conversation that me and you have had a bunch of, and obviously Ben, that's something that you talk about all the time. How do you guys direct your next chapter? Like, how do you think through what is next and why there needs to be a next in terms of business, in terms of life, in terms of relationships, just in general?
Well, I think it all goes together, right? We spoke about this the other day, you and I, when it comes to harmony. And in the beginning, really, there's just like, oh, what can I, and maybe you agree with this or not, Ben, for when you're starting a business, you have an idea and you want to roll with it. But then as you grow, you want to do more and more and more and more. But as we know, as entrepreneurs, all three of us, like burnout is fucking real. So, I mean, in my mind, to answer your question, it's really going back to being present. And does this serve me and who I want to be in this? Because if it doesn't, then I can say no to it. But there are different projects and things that we want to take on along the way. For me personally, it's really hard for me to, as a visionary, to say no to those things because they sound so exciting. But have I finished the mission that I'm currently doing? Is it set up enough so I can take a step in a different direction? Is the carrot dangling right in front of me so I can grab it, or do I wait to see the bigger one that's like the golden carrot down the line? So it's all of this like, oh, okay, let me gain some perspective on the situation of what we've done. Growth is always good, but is it serving who I am now so I can be thoroughly authentic through it all? And I mean, that's just how I feel about growth and change and pivoting in different directions. It's a constant flow of, is this important today, or does this just sound really fun because of what I'm doing is you know, the boring work needs to get done too.
Yeah, and listen, as entrepreneurs, you know, you see a shiny object, sometimes you get blinded by it. And that's the whole thing. We talk about this all the time, is like taking a step back and the refocus. And I think you brought up some good points, you know, around what feels right. Like from an energetic standpoint, from an entrepreneur to be able to actually go in and sit with whatever project or situation or problem to solve, to take a step back and to be in it, good, bad, indifferent, is super important. And for me, I always that's always a major check-in for myself, is just does this align? I believe you use the word alignment, balance, alignment, and going in to some degree, does it feel right or does it feel forced? I think along my journey, it's a big thing that I've always, a tool that a muscle that I've developed, really on that checks and balance. Because, you know, once you're out there and you have success, there's no shortage of things to do. There's no shortage on opportunities that come in every single day. And you know, if you're opportunistic and you get excited about things, it's hard to take a step back to just really look and dive into that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's through experience, right? I mean, how many times have I not done that early on, where it's like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. Let's do this. Let's do the other thing. And then nothing gets done.
Sure.
Right? Sure. So I believe, like today, personally, I'm in a position where I still don't think the ship that we're sailing, that is Hidden Summit, my main business, my baby, what we've grown to be something really special, is at a point where I can let it set sail and start something new fully.
Do you ever think that's a reality
Well, there are some days
as an
where,
as an
well, there are some
entrepreneur?
days where it's like, let's just see this thing maybe sink to the bottom of the ocean. Like, today's not the day.
Listen, man, I've been doing this for 17 years on my core business, and you always feel like that. I think, talking to mentors, like until the day you sell your business and you get a check, you always have a bit of that angst that, you know, fuck me, it's one of these days. Why am I still doing this? Um, I think that's the journey, right? That's as an entrepreneur, you're always gonna feel that way, and it's a good thing. It's almost like your own checks and balance.
Right. Well, I think to answer your question, I think, well, I don't know if I'll ever feel that way, but if I went based everything off a feeling, then I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I'd still have that retail job that we were talking about earlier. So I do believe that through my experience and knowing like what that gut feeling is of this is the next move, it is allowing me to maybe spread myself in different directions, but intentionally, not just because I want to feel good in the moment, right? But to create something new, to create something special. And I feel like that as a visionary, as a leader, is something I do really well.
Right.
And you said you've done a ton of different projects, so obviously it can happen. There are plenty of people who do this, but for me, it's like, okay, let's not rush this. Let's just not bounce to the next shiny object. But if this is set up enough to stay the course, I can still be there for and like with the people who I have running the show to help them, guide them, manage them if I need. But I can now open the door to something new, something different, something that I do care about, something I think can impact the world just as greatly. And that's going to take time because
How do you plan for that? Like, what is your day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year check for yourself to make sure you're on path, and or if you're not on path, what do you do to reposition?
so there's a lot of self-reflection that happens. I meditate daily, and then I find when I don't, things just start to go stir crazy and spiral. So that really helps. It helps me be exactly where I am. And I ask myself, are these the right decisions? And this is the right direction I'm going to go. I also have a strong support system. Lacey, my girlfriend, and I, we have a monthly meeting where we sit down and we plan. Right. So I'm fortunate enough now to have a partner who wants to do grow businesses with me. So we check in to say, like, well, what is this going to take over the next 30 days, over the next 60 days, over the next 90 days? Where do we want this to be a year from now? And then we backtrack and we say, okay, what do we do today? And we know that she runs her own business and I run my own business. So this is additional work. But together, which is the most lasting thing that we have, right? We're able to do this without the expectation of it being done in a certain time, but knowing that over time, it will become what it's supposed to become.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You touched on meditation, and we have these conversations. We talk to other folks, and a lot of them say, like, what do you do in your daily practice? That's super important to me, and I look at meditation again as another muscle and another tool. That's especially for an entrepreneur, to shut your mind off for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you can go 20 minutes, to just be in oneness and to just be in nothingness is so crucial. And that's kind of how I look at it. How do you turn that? How does meditation in your daily practice play into the successes that you have? And what does that practice look like for you?
Sure. So, I mean, it plays into the successes I have because it allows me to separate from the noise that is every day. And I think being grounded and allowing the world to come to me in those moments and just recognize my thoughts, recognize my senses helps me so much to then recharge, regenerate in 10 minutes. I'm good for 10 minutes and then I go back to whatever it is I'm doing. And I make sure that I do it every single day. It'll be wake up, I work. So this might be different. I wake up, I work, I go to the gym, I come back from the gym, I eat, I hop in the cold water. After the cold water, I sit and do nothing for 10 or 11 minutes and do a guided meditation.
Interesting.
Because then I've physically put myself in a position to move forward. I've recharged physically through fuel of food. I've put myself in a stressful situation intentionally with the cold water. And then before I go into my stressful day as an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
before the meetings, before the chaos, before the fires need to be put out, I think, who is it that I want to be today? And what is it that I want to get done by the end of the day? And then whatever thoughts and feelings come, I recognize them. I don't absorb them all. Equanimity in its finest moment. And then I go to work.
That's some really good insight. And just energetically, I'm one that is always paying attention to energy, and talk about like businesses or people that you work with. Like that's something as entrepreneurs, right? You got to play the part that there's not a lot of emotion around it, and you're a robot to some degree. But like energy is super important.
Well, I don't think you're a robot. I think you're just
Yeah.
very logical. And you know what you want to do is
Yeah.
you're not going to let that emotion overtake you. Like it happens.
Fair enough.
Like the days we're like, we're burning it down. Like,
Yeah.
okay. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. That's probably not the best idea. So then we pull it back. And then, I think meditation, and Jamie and I had this conversation before. Like there are days where we meditate and it's really fucking hard.
Mm.
But the magic happens between the meditation sessions.
Big time.
Because
Yep.
then you realize like, oh, okay, I can stop here. I can pause. I can literally do nothing in this moment where chaos is happening, and I can reflect on what I am seeing and sensing and feeling, and then make a more logical decision to move forward versus crash and burn in that moment.
And the funniest thing about something that I've thought about a lot, and it's only through meditation that I've actually been able to sit and like understand this concept. Is it happening to me or is it happening around me? And that's like the biggest differentiator for me. Like I've been studying a lot of Stoicism recently, and it talks about this concept of being the rock against the waves. So the waves will continue to smash into the rock, but the rock never moves. The rock doesn't do anything. The rock is just the rock. And so understanding that all meditation does is it takes me out of the moment of, is this happening to me? Why did this person say this to me? Or why is this happening to, and it kind of reverses a lot of that victim mentality that I think can be built up, especially in a business and especially in life. There's always bullshit. And like if you look hard enough, there's going to be bullshit. But separating, is this happening to me versus is this happening, around me, I think is the biggest differentiator for me. And that has only been achieved through meditation and through talking to people like you guys who are like, hey, like there's going to be days that fires are going to be breaking out and there's nothing you can do. But as long as you can just be calm minded, and 10 minutes is, people think like 10 minutes feels like it's not that much time, but just 10 minutes to just be, it's like, it's incredible.
Yeah, those people haven't walked on the treadmill for like 10 minutes at the end of a workout when you only have 10 minutes left after an hour. You just tell me 10 minutes is a long time. Do 10 minutes of burpees. It'll be a long time. But you're right. I mean, I think, and I was listening to a meditation the other day where the guided meditation changed. And he said, instead of just recognizing be, right? Allow the world to come to you here. Like absorb those thoughts. And then in those moments, like make sure you understand how you feel instead of just pushing them away right away. So when we can do that, when literally nothing is going on, but ourselves choosing to be in that moment, are you going to be more prepared for when you are not ready for it in real life, right? So like there's a difference between ready and prepared. Like any of us in this room can go in and say like, oh, I'm ready to take on the chaos of the day. But then when it actually happens, if you've practiced it in silence and solitude by choice, you're more prepared to take those moments on. And then you can be more of yourself, your authentic self, and hold your integrity and your character to lead the life and the path that you want for your business or your partner or whatever situation that you're in. So,
And I was going to touch on before, just energetically, you're a calm dude. Like you're a super chill, calm dude, but it's, you have so much going on all the time, I'm sure. So to have that meditation as part of your practice, to be able to go back and use that tool is, I'm sure, crucial in your daily.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it was fucking 15 years ago when I was 300 pounds, like I was a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Like meditation wasn't even a thing on my mind. And I would react emotionally. And before that, when things weren't going our way, life's not fair. And like, why is this happening to me? Right? It was a victim mentality.
Victim.
And then it wasn't until I grew the fuck up and took control of my life physically that I could be more mentally prepared for things. And sure, we're human. I was having this conversation with someone last night on a podcast that we ran for Hidden Summit. And this doesn't mean I'm perfect. Like inside, I have all of this chaos going on, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like I have a million things to do right now, but that doesn't help me be present here and like bring my focus and my passion to why we want to have this conversation. So the I, there are moments where I feel up and down, right? Like I wish I could be level and this ninja through life, but like I'm human. So
There's the reality of life. There's
right,
things that are going on outside of our world, even in real time today. Like it's just fucking heavy.
right.
So you're trying to manage yourself, you're trying to manage your life, you're trying to manage your business, your partners, whatever it may be. And then you've got a whole other level of chaos and heaviness. Like,
Yeah, to your
yeah,
point exactly, with what happened to a colleague and friend, like what can you do about it?
what do you do?
Right?
You can show up from a space of love,
Yes.
or you can show up from a space of hate and anger. Um,
But how does that affect you and everything else that you have going on? Right? You can be present and you can give that love and create that energy and send
Yeah.
it to them, which will help them. But if you didn't and you brought that hate and that fire and just because the world is so fucked in
Yep.
so many different ways, like how does that affect everything else in your life?
Correct. And it could spiral. Like you can choose to go down one rabbit hole or another a dark rabbit hole or a light rabbit hole, right? You focus on the light, you're just going to be a little bit lighter, even though there's that heaviness all around you coming down.
And I think I forget who told me this, but it's like circumstances really only take their, their consequences with how they live in your brain. So yes, you can't affect anything that's happening around you or happening to you necessarily. If it's outside of your control, it's just outside of your control. But where it becomes how you control it is how it lives in your brain and how you treat it. Not only treat the circumstance that came along to your life, but then how do you interact with that? And then how do you talk to yourself about that circumstance that just happened? We were talking to Britt Foshi a few weeks ago, and it's the biggest difference maker that I've ever seen in my life of having a conversation with yourself and how are you saying it. So for instance, if I missed a morning run or something like that, is the conversation with myself, why the fuck did you miss your morning run this morning? Or is it, what was the reason that you decided that you weren't going to run today versus every other day? That little bit change in terms of the tonality and how you're speaking to yourself sets you up for either success, or it kind of, at least in my life, it's caused spirals, whether if how I'm interacting with myself is negative because of the circumstances around me are so negative.
Sure. Language is everything. Communication is everything. And the first person we need to communicate with is ourselves, right? The belief systems that we create as individuals are only because we accept the thoughts that we put into our head. No one else did. No one else was like, hey, you must think this way. They just said something and you're like, oh, yeah. And that becomes a habit. And over time, that becomes part of your identity and who you believe that you are. And then you can go down a path that you are not happy with. So, I mean, it spirals rather quickly if you're not in control of it. But no one teaches this.
No one teaches you that. Correct. And it's really easy to judge yourself, right? And we're our worst critics all the time.
Yeah.
We can be better. We can be faster. We can be stronger. Why aren't we leveling up? But looking from the other end, like you're saying, like you just got to love yourself. And you just have to listen, give yourself a break every once in a while.
Yeah, and
it's hard to do.
And if you don't,
easier said than done.
If you don't love yourself,
right,
ask why.
Look in the mirror.
Yeah. Time. My biggest to-do list is like write down everything that you hate about yourself.
Yeah.
And then write everything you want to be. And then cross off everything that you hate about yourself and leave it in the fucking past.
That's right.
It's not serving you.
It's not serving you. Did you ever go through a period looking back in your journey that you can say you didn't love yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Dude, I was 300 I was 300 pounds 15 years ago. I lived in a futon in my parents' basement. I was failing out of school. I had a 0.5 GPA. I worked at a Ruby Tuesdays, and all of the money that I worked for, I would go buy beer and cocaine and like hang out with my friends and smoke cigarettes in parking lots. But then I went home and I was alone.
Yep.
And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? But then I would just do it again and again and again.
Did you go through a period of depression?
I don't know if I necessarily ever admitted that I was depressed, but hindsight is 20/20. And looking back, like I used to be captain of the lacrosse team, and I was part of the student council in high school, and I was in all of the clubs and all of everything, like most versatile. And then I lost my way.
Was there something looking back in that journey that was that just shifted? You know, being a leader, being a captain, you had everything going in the right directions. Was there something that just shifted you there?
Yeah.
And then as you were going through kind of, we'll call it the dark side and the depression and the waking and, you know, the drug addiction, that like, how'd you get off that? How did you shift out of that
So
space?
I think I was just lack of preparation for life. And I'm not blaming it on anybody anymore. I used to blame it on my guidance counselors. Like, no one told me what it was going to be like after high school. Like, I graduated, they did their job, right? But then I only applied to 4 schools. I got into one. I went to college. And no one teaches you at 18 years old, like, how to drive in rush hour traffic in New York City, to go to school, to park 2 miles away and walk to class and wait hours between classes. So I just like was a curious kid and got into some shit and found my group of friends that, you know, rather play in my rock band at the time than go to class. And it was just over time, just like these little tiny decisions formed habits that I didn't have beforehand, because I had structure and organization and camaraderie and leadership towards a positive goal. And then when that was dismissed, that community was gone. And I formed a community with like-minded people, but those habits became toxic versus positive. So and that's funny that I've actually not thought about it that way and said it before, but the reason behind Hidden Summit and why we have such a strong community is literally that. The idea is that we don't need to do this alone. And if you are surrounded by like-minded individuals, our goals might be different, but we can help each other move forward. So the moment where it shifted for me to go back, right, it was years later. I was 22, it was Thanksgiving, and I was with my parents and family of a large Italian and Irish family. So big party, small house.
Yep.
Everybody gathers in the kitchen.
Everybody's got an opinion too.
Yeah, exactly. So we're hanging out, and I'm drinking too much. And my dad told me to stop drinking, so we got into an argument, and the argument got heated. And I ran outside and like fucking screaming, an idiot, and I punched a hole in my own car window in front of my entire family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmother was there. And I was like, what the fuck? I just started crying. Like bloodied arm and everything. And I go back, just walk my way weeping to the backyard and sit down on a little stoop on the deck that we had. Nobody got mad. Everybody was silent. I think they were just scared, right? My aunt comes up to me and she goes, we've all fucked up before too. We've all messed up. Now you have. If you want to change, you need to decide to change. We're all okay now because we chose to get better. This is your moment to choose to get better or not. And that was it. I was like, this is my fault.
You took responsibility.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yeah.
So,
and it sounds like just that sprinkle of support and love and knowing that you're okay from, you know, family that has your best interests.
Right. People that I had pushed away because I felt like I was alone, even though I wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, I was, you know, a 22-year-old boy. Like, I'm invincible.
Yeah,
like, everything's going to be okay.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
deep.
And, you know, so the story goes, I get my act together. I transfer schools. I lost 40, 50 pounds in the next semester, got my grades up over the next semester, went to a different school after that, played on the lacrosse team. After I got on the lacrosse team, then, I found CrossFit and jobs, and here we are. So.
And that was your journey into fitness that led you right
back into fitness.
Yeah.
Like I was always fit growing up, but it wasn't until like I was able to take a step in a direction. So it was cool. Like life happens in a way where things happen simultaneously. So shortly after that, we go and visit a school because my sister was being recruited there to play lacrosse, and she was not going to go there, but she had already commit to go and talk with them, and my father wanted her to go just in case, right? So when she went with my dad, he bumped into the men's lacrosse coach, and they were looking for players because they were starting a new team. So my dad at the time, he passed away almost 10 years ago. He was saying, hey, my sons play lacrosse. Not saying that I was 300 pounds and an asshole. So we go in and they talk with us and they say no to me. They're like, your grades are too bad and you're too fat, basically. They're like, no, you can't do this. And they wanted my brother. who was traveling to go to Australia the next semester anyway. So neither one of us were going to go. And I just said, watch me, just watch. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'm at the gym every day. I was running again. I felt like garbage doing it, but we kept putting one foot in front of the other. I started going to school again. I was like, okay, well, school is easy, so let me just do this. And I got all A's and got my grades up. And then they came in, found me at a Starbucks for a meeting, and they didn't recognize me. And that felt really good because I was like, oh, it's me. Like, I'm the fat kid, but I'm not fat anymore because I'm 50 pounds down.
Yeah.
So I went to the school after that. So that after being told no, I was able to, move forward and take action.
So that's, that's kudos to you. You were able to actually lift yourself up in that dark place and say, fuck it. Like, no one's going to tell me no. And you just did it,
Right.
didn't overthink it. This is my goal. Here's my short-term goals, and I'm gonna make it happen. And you did.
Yeah, I still don't like being told no, but I'm better at like talking about it. I agree.
Right?
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because it's so often that like when we fall into a rabbit hole, whether it's mentally, physically, no matter what, there's multiple layers to it. But the first one starts with your relationship with yourself. And the relationship with yourself is directly correlated to what your daily actions look like. Because I've never been in a bad headspace when I was doing the right things on a daily basis. It's so weird because it's like when I'm taking care of myself and I'm taking time for myself and I'm doing things that are important for me, all of a sudden I can deal with obstacles better. I can deal with bad situations better because I trust myself and I trust how I'm thinking about myself. And it's just this chain of connection of what are my daily actions and does that represent the type of person I want to be? Because then I can believe in that person because my daily actions show that I can do those things.
So I'm like, so if you're telling somebody for the first time exactly what you just said, like where are they starting to find these habits? Because I think it's easier for you to say it because you know that you're moving in a positive direction. But for somebody like me that has nothing going for them and they're not happy and they can't look at themselves in the mirror and they feel like they have no support, what do they do to make sure they know they're doing these positive things?
I can't say for everybody. I'll just talk about my experience. I was in college, drinking, just pretty much had lost myself in the status of what college was. So I wanted to be I wanted to be the most known guy on campus. Like that was my like objective. That was my goal. I was chasing it. I was obviously doing everything, but I was living for everybody else. And every day that I'd be by myself, I would just be trapped in anxiety, fear, depression, just a feeling of like lack in a lot of cases. And I was just, I didn't understand. And I didn't get it, and I really had no idea what to do. But somebody came to me and was like, hey, you just start journaling. And it was like that, believe it or not, was the first habit that I started. That at that time, I was super out of shape. I hated how I looked. Like, granted, I wasn't like, 300 pounds or anything like that. But for my own standard of myself, I was probably the lowest I'd been in a very long time. And it started with journaling. And what journaling allowed me to do was objectively look at what is happening, like what is happening in my life, what did my day look like today, and how is that resonating with me? A lot of people, they get journaling mixed up because they think journaling is like you're writing for somebody else to read it, and that's like the last thing you want to do. You literally want to have your raw, honest thoughts about what's currently happening. Sometimes you're talking to yourself super negatively, sometimes you're talking to yourself super positively. The point of it is you just don't go in with any expectations. But I did that, and it was so interesting because even days later, after being in that position, I'd read my journal and I'd be like, okay, but today, instead of waking up, getting on my phone, smoking a joint, and starting my day, I got up, I journaled, I meditated, I read a little bit, and all of a sudden I feel so good. Okay, well, I'm gonna do that one again. And then it was just, now 5 years later, I've like journaled almost every single day, and I just have these books of like, hey, when I'm really depressed about something, like what is happening around me, or what are some of my daily activities that I'm not proud of and why I feel that way. So that's a long-winded way to answer it, but it's the real answer to me, at least, is starting with journaling, because the journaling creates awareness. And then once you have that awareness of what's going on, that's when you can start solving. And,
Yeah, I think it takes, it's very mature. Like, you're younger than me. It's very mature of you to not just write it, but to go back and look at it. Because nothing is harder than looking at your own thoughts and then recognizing what worked and what didn't work and saying, oh, let's not do that again. Let's do this one. Because if you just write and then you write about bad habits day after day after day, it just becomes like a sad, sad journal. But you are able to go back and reflect. So I think the action is there, but then the reflection on who you were and who you're becoming is super important.
Yeah. I'm interested, Ben, when you know, when you were in, last like late 30s, and obviously you're having all this success personally and professionally, like, but internally you felt so kind of lost. Like what was it for you? What was step one for you?
Yeah, I've shared this story with you a bit. I would say I was mid to late, probably 37, 38. You start thinking a little bit about families. I was riding this hockey stick of a business. Life was good. I was traveling the world. Um, but at that point in my life, I actually, as I checked all these boxes that I was supposed to check, I felt more isolated and more siloed in my own space. I mean, I'd come to my business. It's like I created a handful of layers. And it's like I wanted to know what was going on. I didn't necessarily know what was going on. Being that entrepreneur who wants to control every aspect of your business, that was a big lesson in just like, all right, give up control. But, I siloed myself in a bit, and I was by myself, and the journey wasn't as fun. And I kind of coined this like I had entrepreneurial depression. And it wasn't from a space of quote unquote what failure is supposed to look like. I just wasn't fulfilled. I was like, all right, this is it. I've done a bunch. I've been blessed to experience incredible things in my life at that point, but I was at my lowest, and I went in. I think it was around 2018. Took a step back, created some more layers in my own organization, and I knew it was super important to go in and see what my problem was. I had to take a hard look, and a lot of it was around relationships. I was not emotionally available, to any partner that I had, and I had to take a hard look at that. And that's when I, shifted gears and did something a bit drastic, not drastic, just open to a different idea aside from going to my therapist and saying, hey, here's some depression pills, or here's some Xanax to cope with your anxiety and your depression. I was not a believer in that. And, I went down to South America and worked with shamans and plant medicine. And really it gave me a different perspective introspectively on what my challenge was. And a lot of it, it is what it is. It always stems down to childhood and how you were raised, and trauma and past trauma. I mean, people use that word trauma, pretty loosely.
Yeah, that word is
Thrown around a little too much. But we all have fucking trauma. Let's be honest. It's all how you look at it. Like, I could look at my childhood, and I was blessed. I had a lot more opportunity than most. It wasn't perfect. You dealt with some cards, and it is what it is. That's life. Like parents that did their best, but they had their own shit to deal with. That's fucking life. You can be a victim to that, but it did affect me. It did affect, why I couldn't have a relationship. And, part of my journey was learning how to love myself. That was my big thing after spending months in the jungle. It's like, I didn't know how to love myself. I would push myself harder. It wasn't good enough. And you talked about language. Like I wasn't talking to myself in light. I was talking to myself, and a lot of that is just, looking back, like what did my parents have to go through? What did their grandparents? They only know what they know. And that comes on to you.
They didn't talk about this back then.
They didn't talk about that. They talked about, fortunately I'm able to have these conversations with my dad now. It's like, it's a different generation. It's like sink or swim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You sink or you swim. And that's just how it was. When I started my business, my dad said, good luck. Don't come to me for
begging
for money.
Yeah.
But you want to go take on Big Sugar, good luck. And that was my fuck that. I'm gonna show and everybody else, you're starting a sweetener company with under $100,000, okay, but you just do it. Right. And yeah, that was a big thing for me in that moment of just like that realization of I don't know how to, if I don't know how to love myself, how am I going to love my partners or a partner? And how am I showing up for my employees? How am I showing up for my friends? How am I showing up for my family? And that was a pivotal point
Yeah.
where I just shifted.
What I'm hearing more so is like you were able to look inward and begin to love yourself because you weren't judging yourself in
Yep.
those moments, and you decided to be there. And I don't think you need to be an entrepreneur or go on the spiritual journey to be able to do these
For sure.
things. But I think that if you know more of who you want to be, you can get there if you don't pass judgment on to give either one of those the power. I'm going to give myself the power and then have the vision to look ahead of who it is that I want to become and ask myself, what does that person do today to take one step closer to becoming that person?
Right.
And if we can't do that, it's a sad story.
And it's really easy to go down these rabbit holes of the future, right? Like, what does my future look like? You just got to be present in the now and do your best.
Yeah, because I think that takes away a little bit of like the anxiousness or the fear.
Fear creates
Right.
anxiety.
Right, exactly. But I think fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin,
Sure.
because fear means we just don't have all the answers while excitement does.
Right.
So why are you afraid about it? Let's go find out more information, and then we'll probably be more excited about it than fearful.
Right.
And I think it's interesting. One of the, I had a conversation with this guy recently, really successful guy, owns 20 plus companies. He's in his 60s. He's, well off to no end. And I was asking him, I was like, simply, like, let's just talk, because, he's made billions of dollars. And I was like, simply, like, talk to me about what is something that people can do now that is as simple as possible, that isn't, super technical or whatnot. And he was like, you'd be surprised how many people just need to stay off of social media. And it's like there's this idea versus creation and consumption. And consumption inspires fear, it inspires lack, it inspires why am I not doing that? And in just simplicity, like I can look at my phone time and look at how much time I'm spending scrolling on social media. That is time that I'm not spending living. And like that's the craziest shit that people just don't realize. It's like, wow, I'm gonna spend, let's say it's, I don't even know, let's say it's 2 hours a day. And a lot of people are way over this, but let's say you spend 2 hours of your day consuming online on social media. You multiply that by 7 days, you just spent 14 hours in 1 week living in other people's lives and not your own. And it's so simple. Like, what could you do with 2 hours? You could work out, you could meditate, you could do all this stuff. So since I had that conversation, like I get home, and normally when I get home, it's okay, I'm gonna quickly make something while, I'm watching a YouTube video in the background and while I'm trying to scroll social, and I'm like just kind of living. I'm living half on my phone and I'm living half in real life. And I was like, what if I just put my phone away and I just lived? How much more could I get done? And then all of a sudden you get more done. Now you have more experiences to talk about. Now you have more proof of what type of person you are. Like, what do you do when you're bored? What is the first thing that you want to revert to? It's like, it was so simple to hear that all it really is just like, why are you spending so much time living in somebody else's life when you could just like this, for example, right? We're in the office all day, and everybody who's a business owner, they think that like, oh, they're always busy. Like that's most of the time just not true. Like a lot of times you're spending time trying to find other things to do, whether it's annoy your employees, whether it's whatever, get in the way basically, or you're spending time, what is everybody else doing? Why am I not doing that? Okay, and then that just inspires all this whatever creation. This is just creation. This is just a conversation, and that's why it inspires me so much to sit here and get this, because this is whatever, an hour plus of time that could be spent doing anything, but it's spent here having a conversation that, who knows, it could be seen by hundreds of people and it could inspire somebody. But that's the idea of creation versus consumption that's been so apparent in my life recently. And yeah, I just wanted to understand more from like Ben and you, Cav, like, well, what is that? How has that been true in your own life? Because Ben, you're one of those people, you do not spend time on social media.
No, I'm like technologically, I'm way below. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's because I see the negatives, and to your point, like when you're energetically connected to things and you pay attention, like, I find myself the same thing. It's like I'm doom scrolling. I'm looking at this shit, and I go down these rabbit holes. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I so upset? And when you're able and you have access to all sorts of different interesting people, you form your own opinions and you hear different opinions of worldly opinions that matter. And then you're sitting there and you're just seeing these people who have very little credibility out there in the world giving misinformation. And you know we live in a world where everybody's intentions, no one has an attention span, less than, it's like on to the next, on to the next. So it's dangerous. I mean, I was just going to ask you, like, how do you feel about where we're heading in society, in the world, around social media, how people are using it, how people are abusing it? I mean, listen, it's also forming incredible businesses. We know that as well. Like, how do you find that happy medium? How do you find that balance?
It's all based, at least how I view it, and I believe this in any, you could look at any vice realistically. Is it a tool or is it a crutch? And that's really the question that you have to ask yourself. Is your social interactions happening through social media? That right there is represented as a crutch. Or are you using social media as a tool to grow business? Or like I used to be in this mindset, like social media is a way for me to express myself, and I was like, no, that's super backwards. If I want to express myself, I can express myself in my journal. Because guess what? That doesn't create any feeling of like, oh my God, what's happening? What do they think of me? And all that type of stuff. Social media is a tool to be used to help further my life personally, my business's life. But the second I start using social media as a crutch, like a crutch when I'm bored, a crutch when I feel like I'm insecure in my relationship, a crutch when I feel like my business isn't going the way that I want it to go. Like that is when I think it's super toxic. And in terms of society, I mean, I think we live in, we've always been in a world. And I think it's interesting. We have such a recency bias of like, oh my God, the world is ending. Everything is cyclical. At least when I talk to people that have, they're 70, 80 years old, they're like, the world was, you know, quote unquote burning when the Cold War was happening. The world was burning when, Y2K came out. Like there's all these instances where we are as a society just in like we're just consumed by fear. But the more and more that I recognize, it's like some people will rise above that and some people won't. And that's just kind of the dynamic of the world.
So we just have more we just have more access to it now,
Mm.
and it's instant. So it seems more present than it ever was. And I wasn't alive in those times, but I can imagine the reason why everybody is so opinionated is because they have a voice, which I think can be a good thing or a bad thing, right? There's just more access to this communication and all of that on social media. Now, when it comes to me and social media, like you ask me all the time, do you know about this person? Do you know about that person? Do you know about this on YouTube? And I'm like, I have no fucking idea. Like I live on social media because my business is on the internet, but I don't scroll too often. Like I have my like funny things I watch, and I think we all need like a little like dopamine hit of like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's really that's funny. Let me post and share it so more people can laugh today, or whatever it is. But I just unfollow accounts that I'm like, you've changed. I don't want to follow that anymore. But people have a tough time letting go, which is a whole nother conversation we can have. Like letting go of something that we want to, as stupid as a fucking social media account. But for me, like I use it like not to just influence, but to impact others. And while I don't have the biggest account or the strongest following, and engagement comes and goes with the algorithm or like people like liking my content this season or not, my message is going to be pure. I'm going to hold the line of integrity of who I am and why I'm sharing on social media. So somebody, that one person it resonates with, I have the chance to help you change your life. And that's why I think it's a powerful tool. But just the same, there are so many people who are just confidence in what you say does not equate to it being the answer for you. Because I can tell you, like, this plan is going to change your life. And if you work with me for 30 days, I promise you'll lose 100 pounds. And you're like, oh my God, I will fucking believe him. Like, this makes sense. Like, it took me 10 years to gain 100 pounds, but like, I will lose it in 30 days. But how many times does that happen? I speak specifically in like diet and nutrition and wellness culture, but like with finances, with careers, with, the news. The confidence doesn't mean that it's true. So I think what would help people is like actually going and doing your own research.
You just hit it. You just hit it. Like clearly you're aligned on your mission and you're out there. You're out there giving positivity in this world, right?
I'm trying.
And you're trying. Well, it's clearly that you're aligned, right?
Yes.
It's clearly that you're giving a good message out there and you want people to live and feel better and be healthier from your own experiences, right? From your own experiences, from your own research. The challenge is the folks that are the people that are not doing their research and suddenly they've built a platform. Who knows how they built a platform? Maybe it's the right reason. Maybe it's that you're able to show a little too much skin and people like suddenly they have a huge voice and are not taking the time to be responsible with their voice. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I know people very close to me who have this voice has grown with their social media platform and they become lost in it, consumed by it.
Ego.
And then who they are in real life is not who they are online. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Karma's a bitch. You're going to get found out.
Right.
And that's what I was going to say, that everybody talks to me about that. They're like, you know, what do you do about the people that are just bullshit online and they bullshit and they're not real? And it's funny because everything is cyclical and social media is definitely one of them. And because of the nature of my company, I feel like I'm pretty tapped in on like what's happening in social media. We're in a world in social right now that is just longing for authenticity. And we're training our brains as people that consume to have a keen awareness on authenticity, because it's not something that you can identify as like that's because they're doing X, Y, and Z, they're more authentic. It's literally just a feeling. It's an immediate connection with somebody, because just as, you know, we were having a conversation off this podcast and now we're having a conversation on it. And there really isn't much of a difference between off it and on it. Just the fact that we're trying to stay closer to the mic a little bit. Like that's about it. And I think that's that's what people are longing for. And that's what people want. And I think as long as we live in a world that, you know, I might just be the delusional person that believes that people generally are good and people want goodness for themselves and they want goodness for others. I get that that's kind of delusional in some respects, but I think understanding that we'll always come back, no matter what cycle we're in social media wise, to people just want fucking people. Like people just want to connect with real people. Like they don't want to connect with ideologies of people.
Well, let's keep this social and social media. Let's be social here. Let's learn to have a conversation here. Let's not just throw opinions at one another. Let's actually ask questions and inquire, like, why is it that you think that way? Without the fear of you jumping down my throat. Let's stop trolling and let's start talking. Like, I think that's something that, I mean, people troll on me quite often and I just laugh. I'm like, really? Like keyboard?
I'm going to say, do you actually care?
Like, no, I mean, the keyboard, and it did affect me early on. It hurts.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable. There's a fucking Reddit page on me. Like I laugh. Like I go to whatever so often and be like, oh, okay. Like I'm doing okay. Just to like look back at like, oh, one person's opinions drop. Like these people don't know who I am. And if they do, they probably have their opinion, which is fine. I'm not for everybody. But it's like, okay, I made it. I have a Reddit page about me and people are talking shit. Like,
but doesn't that just say that like I was having a conversation with one of my clients recently, and he put out like a piece of content, and it was basically him. He went to Dunkin' Donuts and he bought 2 Dunkin' Donuts, and he sat in Dunkin' Donuts and just stared at the donuts for like 5 minutes, and then he like put them together and threw them out, and people were just attacking him in the comments, like, you're like, you have an eating disorder, and like just jumping down his throat. And this is a person that normally that would hurt him like so unbelievably hard. And he calls me and he's laughing and he's just like, man, I would hate to be the person that thinks that not eating 2 donuts is having an eating disorder. And we were just we were having a really like, we were just kind of like laughing at like the fact that like, yeah, like that obviously there's no judgment, like people are in whatever stage of life that they're in, but like haters, trolls, people that actively spend time engaging on social media trying to hate on other people, it's like, man, I would hate to have that mentality. Like it's almost a feeling of like I feel sorry, and then it's you come at it at a different angle. You come at it with compassion. Like, man, like I long for hoping that you find, you know, something in life that gives you more energy than commenting on my social media trying to be a troll. Like, I hope you find something that gives you more energy than that.
I would have sent him a Dunkin' Donuts gift card.
And that's what I'm curious. Like, how do so many people have so much time to spend?
I have no idea.
Right.
I
Like,
have
what
no
the
idea.
fuck are these people doing? You know,
I don't know.
and they're the victim.
So-
and you know, like, do you have a job? What are you doing with your time?
So, a friend of mine, Andy Frisella, he says this all the time. He's like, "You're sitting in your fucking parents' basement, like typing away because you got nothing else going on." I'm like, well, I don't understand, like how, like to your point exactly. People are scrolling and looking for this, and I get it. Like some people, maybe your friend posted about that on purpose, right? Like, oh, if I post this, it's going to pop off on the comments. And like that stuff happens all the time. Like I have a very good friend who has a humongous following and he's just got like a YouTube plaque because he has over 1 million subscribers. And like he does this purposefully all the time. And people hate on him for it. But then the people who buy into the program like actually see results and he's changing the world. So it's a sick, twisted way to go about it. But I think like that, you're right. People at the end of the day spend too much time on social media and they're worried about their, you know, anything that's not their own selves. They're not having those self conversations. They're not building positive habits. There's no time to reflect. And they're just like, what else can I do to like make sure that everybody else's life is miserable as well?
And I can tell you this as somebody that, you know, has worked with plenty of personal brands. One of the first things that I tell people is I'm like, hey, listen, this is what the society is. There's trolls on the internet. Guess what? When they comment on your shit, it helps. So let's play into it. But some people, I'm like, hey, like speak your most authentic self. If it just so happens to piss people off, great. That's actually the idea of this whole idea. And I think it's funny because social media, yes, there's missions behind it, but like it gives you a good read on where we're at as a society. It'll give you like where people are at, like mentally, physically, spiritually. And it's like, yeah, I mean, can we sit here and be like, man, that sucks for sure. But can we also look at it and be like, yeah, well, it doesn't change my life. It's not going to change my actions. It's not going to change who I am. Like, of course, like, and this is just social media being a microcosm of what we live in like a real world. It's like, just because somebody says something mean to you does not mean that you're going to change how you go about your life just because somebody said something mean to you. It's like that's a flawed way of thinking in general. And in terms of creations, like why would that ever be a way that you're gonna like judge and move just because somebody else has an opinion that could be totally just them being just spreading hate because they hate themselves realistically.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, when I've gotten feedback, I'll just call it feedback.
Give us a good one.
I mean, for a while I was posting like these Twitter style carousels, and I would say like very direct things about nutrition and fitness, and people lose their shit. I was like, taking your dog for a walk is an exercise. It's more of a chore. And people were like, you hate animals, and a dog is something that you love, and it's not a chore, and it's a responsibility. I was like, what? I've had 2 dogs like forever, and then my ex has them. But I'm like, I love animals. Like, I'm just, but thank you for commenting on that. And then you missed all of the other statements that I said along the way as well.
Take a minute and just read.
Like maybe just go exercise without your dog. I don't know.
I get that. It's the same thing in my business. There's always a critic. At the end of the day, someone's got something to say about stevia, right? Like that's one of our core ingredients. It's like, you know what? 20 years ago, I traveled the world. I learned the ins and outs of harvesting, extract. If you can create a better natural sweetener, go fucking do it. Leave me alone. We're just trying to create better for you solutions for diabetics and health conscious consumers and everybody in the world. Like you go figure it out. Everybody's got something to fucking say. Like, go get a job. Like, go do something.
Yeah. It goes.
Not to be aggressive, but yeah.
No, but be aggressive about it. I mean, like, yo, fuck those guys. Like, if they want to start a business, they can go do it. But no, they're probably working at Starbucks.
Well, it's super easy. It's super easy to judge somebody that's solved 80% of a problem and on why that that 80% is so wrong versus they're not going to go do the legwork to actually fly out to China and meet all the people and formulate and change the formulation 3 different times and have to go through all these issues. And like nobody wants to go through that, but everybody thinks once they see it, a semi-finished product or a finished product, they're like, you should have done X, Y, and Z completely different. But if they walked even a half a mile in your shoes, they would have been like, listen, it's a miracle that this thing even exists. Like, congratulations on what you did. And it's, again, we could talk all day about how sick and twisted the online space is, but
Well,
I think
it's like if I'm going to judge, a quarterback from misthrowing a ball.
Right. Go
Wha-
do it.
Like, yeah, I'm not stepping on the field.
Yeah.
And neither is that guy drinking beers during the football game. But
Right,
they have the biggest opinion out of anybody.
Of course.
So, I mean, just to make it more.
But I think you said something earlier. I actually used to take that so fucking personal. Like it would crush my week, and I used to be so emotional. And then maybe it's just with age, and as you get older, and it's just like whatever, man. And we work with a lot of brands, developing their food, beverage, pharmaceutical company, and that's a big conversation now. And they'll come back to me and say, hey, we have some people that are questioning this ingredient. Do you have any feedback on it? I said, yeah. Well, out of the 20,000 reviews you have, how many people break it down on a percentage for me? They're like 6. I was like, you want to spend your energy there, or you want to spend your energy like just educating them?
Right.
And that's how we approach kind of that problem. Like and going back, it's just, you got to just educate yourself, and you got to have the information behind you to, give it to your people, give it to your customers, give it to your students.
Yeah. And I would say to what you just said, like in our 20s, we care about what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
In our 30s, we care about what we think. In our 40s, we just don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, whatever, we're here.
Like in there with customer service, like, I'm calling that motherfucker.
Oh, dude, every day. I'm like, I'm taking care of this. Like, let me get on that. Like,
like, what are you doing? What are we doing? And after a while, you're like,
we just switched over our workout structure because we gave too much and it was being underutilized. So our client shifted too. So we simplified it, right? Simplification is huge when entrepreneurship. Like less is more. Simple is better. Simple is effective. And we had some feedback, right? Like mind you, we're 3 days in now. We're going on day 4. Actually, it's Thursday. On day 2 at 5:30 in the morning, I don't know how this person got my number, but I got a text message like, I don't want to do this program anymore. It's not what I wanted. And I was like, okay, can you tell me why? And we had the conversation and I was like, look, you can still reach your goals here. And have we not led you closer to where you want to be thus far? You're 30 pounds down. You're seeing more mental health. You're actually building your business outside of your current job. You're selling your artwork. You're more emotionally secure. But you're saying like on day 2 of a new workout program, you don't believe that this is for you anymore. It's one person out of the hundreds and thousands of people that we help. I mean, and it kind of twisted me the wrong way because it was 5:30 in the morning and I shouldn't have responded, but I was like, I care about this. Like, I'm going to save you.
Because you do care.
I know, I do.
Because you built this with a simple idea.
Right.
And you manifested it and you made it happen. So you do care. I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, fuck those people. But like, there is still that little like.
Well, I mean,
you can't have.
So to that, I mean, I said, the conversation continued to today. So this was a couple days ago. And I was like, look, I wish you well. I care about you. And if this is what you're choosing to do, totally fine. But know that no other person, a CEO of a company, is going to message you back at 5:30 in the morning. So like, hopefully that leaves something with you as you go on your way to find a workout program that's a little bit different.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's great. And you came from honesty and you came from love and you came from compassion. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because being that I am 24 and running a service-based business, I think the first time, and this was last year, it was the hurricane happened. And at this point, I was, a few months in and I was like only living on a high. Like all of it was the highest of high. Like every time we got a client, it was like the best day of my life. And like I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire. And a hurricane came through, and obviously being in a local market, like, yeah, people are gonna, what's the first thing that they're gonna do? They're gonna cut their digital marketing spend. Most people, like, that's the first assessment. And I got a text, and it was literally, I was going to something for on my birthday. And I got a text, and the guy was like, yeah, like, listen, man, like, the storm just hit us really bad. Like, we have to, like, pause. And I sat there for 20 minutes staring at the text, just feeling like the whole world around me was crumbling. And I was like, it made me second guess whether I wanted to even run a business. I was like, this is so hard. This is so, and I had to look at it, and it took me months. And now obviously we've just been through the cycle. People come and go. It's just a part of life. Like, you kind of remove yourself from that feeling. But like, that first loss is where I think a lot of entrepreneurs in general, like, a lot of them drop off. Like, that's where you have people that just legitimately can't take that feeling of, like, failure. And now in our business, and what me and Ryan talk about literally every single day, is when we're getting feedback, it's actually the best thing possible for our company, because it allows us to be better. It does not matter what the consequence of the feedback is. We mess up every single day. Like, we have conversations every day of, like, things that I could do better and things that I wish I would have improved on. But the whole idea is, if you're not actively searching for that feedback, if you're not actively trying to look at the reality of it, because some people are just assholes. Some people just are assholes, and you just have to assess it and be like, all right, look, I could do a lot of things different, but, like,
You're never going to be happy.
yeah, this person's just not going to be happy. And that just is what it is. But it all comes down to, when we have the awareness of, are we putting our best foot forward in our business? That's when, at least for me, my security was like, yeah, people can come and go, but, like, I'm secure in what we're producing because it's purpose driven. And foundation for everything that we've done in our business. Because if it's just about making money, you'll fucking quit. I promise. Like 99.99.
Or you'll be miserable. I mean,
Or
you
you'll
could-
just hate your
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
You have, I'm sure you have friends that make millions of dollars or whatever it is, and they're fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And if you figure out a way, if you figure out your path that's, like, aligned, and you're doing the things that you love, and you're doing it with people that you love working with, money comes. But listen, if you want to go work on Wall Street and get into finance, that's a path. I got friends who just kill it in that
I
space.
can make a ton more money right now
Right.
if I fired all my fucking team.
That's it.
Right? But I care about them.
You're right.
I want them to be successful.
Yeah.
I want them to
Yeah.
feel what I feel and grow as a human. Right? But, like, sure, are margins worse?
Right.
Yeah. But
Right. So what I'm hearing is people first, bottom line second.
yeah. Like,
And
if
and that's a big thing to say.
yeah, it's fucking, and I have my moments. So
I mean, I get it.
I'm like, oh,
Well,
okay.
I could tell
But-
you war
but-
stories after this.
But
yeah.
yeah, but for me, it's more like, okay, what can I do now? Like, if Hidden Summit burned to the ground today, like, I would be fine.
You'd be fine.
I'd figure it out.
Yep.
Mm.
And I know that, but I want them to know that.
Right. The fire
Right.
doesn't go out, man.
No, I know. Yeah. I don't like,
But you feel that's a thought, right?
Mhm.
That's still like, all right, well, what if that happens? What am I going to do? And then you start questioning yourself. So, and I think that's part of being an entrepreneur. I mean, we all have those conversations at least once a week. I mean, I have it every day, but
yeah.
you know. But to your point that you said something about, you said something in your language. You're not messing up. You're learning lessons.
Yeah. And I would say, like, we had a conversation about this the other day, right? And I love where you are in this room, like, thinking the way you're thinking and taking on the action that you're taking on and building what you're building. But we had a conversation the other day, and you're like, oh, let's address the elephant in the room. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I know you're stressed and you're seeing growth. Like, let's just have a conversation. Like, we don't need to, like, make this a bigger deal. Like, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, it's really hard for me to have these tough conversations. And I was like, bro, just fucking talk
it
to
out.
Mm.
me.
Yeah. And
Like-
that's been the funniest part, because obviously being 24 and being like putting myself in a room where I just surround myself with people that are much older, much wiser. It's so interesting to what I think is a big deal and what everybody else in my life thinks is a big deal, because I'll come to people and I'll be like, obviously I've just, you learn lessons and you do things that maybe you're not super proud of in the moment, but you learn from that. And I think as somebody that's come from a traumatic childhood and always thought that I should be alone and everything is in this mindset of like, I don't deserve X, Y, and Z. I don't deserve to have great friends like you. I don't deserve to have great mentors like you. When you live in that frame, all you're thinking about is, when is this going to blow up? When is this relationship going to blow up? When are these people going to, turn their back and stab me? Like they're going to turn and stab me in the back. Like you're always thinking that frame. And at least for me, like step one in building a successful business has been stop that, like release that expectation, because that expectation will kill you. Because in a lot of conversations, it wasn't a hard conversation that we needed to have. I just needed to have a conversation.
Right.
And a lot of times when you live in the frame of like, oh, my life, like I don't deserve to have a person like Cavan in my life, you're always thinking that if you bring something to somebody that they're going to be like, fuck you, like I don't like you anymore, or whatever the case is. And you live in that frame of mind, and then you bring all of your actions following that, live in that world of that reality has already played itself out when it hasn't even happened yet, because you just haven't had the conversation. And so you create this like just carousel of just bullshit in your head nonstop. And you're just like, wait a minute, if I just have this conversation right.
No one else told you to believe it. So like you play out this whole scenario that never happened, and then you actually have the conversation, and it was like, we good?
Right.
Like, oh, you're seeing a lot of growth and you're pivoting because it benefits the business, and I'm still with you guys, so we can figure it out. Let's get organized here. Yeah, cool. That's it. Fucking 5 minutes, we're done.
And he probably spent about a week
Dude,
having
it was a month.
anxiety
A month.
around a simple conversation.
I was like, oh, okay. Let me take a step back. I'm
Yeah.
a pretty easygoing guy.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I got to get shit done too. So just waiting it out, we'll see. They're delivering on everything still. So like, let's have a conversation. And then he canceled a meeting on me an hour before it started and didn't give me a heads up. And I was like, we should talk.
It's again, I'm grateful to be able to have these conversations and obviously just have people like you guys in my life. But before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one question, Cavan. It's how we end every episode. Obviously Piece of Grit is the title of the podcast, even though Ben would love it to be
Grit and heart.
Uh,
Heart and grit.
What does grit mean to you?
Grit is a determination to get things done even when you don't want to get them done. And like you said earlier, being that rock. Because in life, you can't control everything. So what is in my control allows me to move forward and persevere through these obstacles to get to where it is that I believe I need to be. That's grit.
Wonderful.
Love it.
Another great podcast in the book. Like, subscribe, follow. Thank you all for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing, and we will be back next week.